I'd worked that same room more times than I could count, but the light never stopped startling me. Sun cutting flat and merciless through the reinforced skylights of Wren's Reach Garrison, no shadow deep enough to hide in, which was the point. You didn't get truth out of a captive Dorith in the dark. You got performance. Bright rooms make people forget to perform. 26 years in this work, 11 of them on the Dorith front, and I'd built my whole method around that one idea. Sunlight, patience, silence longer than the prisoners, and a chair close enough that a captive could see I wasn't armed. Most of them broke down somewhere in the first hour, the way frightened things do, with all the mess and contradiction of somebody telling the truth for the first time in their lives. I'd come to trust that mess. It was the only reliable thing I had. The captive that morning was small for her kind, narrow through the shoulders, the chitinous plates along her jaw still scuffed gray from however she'd been brought down. Standard intake had her listed as a line trooper, nothing special, picked up 2 days prior near the Callow Ridge, after her unit scattered under our artillery. I sat across from her with a tablet and a recorder, and hadn't said a word before she started talking. "I gave it gladly," she said. "No one made me." I'd heard that sentence, in some translated shape or another, 11 times that month. 11 different prisoners, 11 different sectors of the front, not one of them with any way to have spoken to the others. 11 flawless confessions, freely given, the same words in the same order, every time. I asked her name, she gave it. Kethra, 3rd Hatch, 2nd Cohort. Nothing strange about that. I asked where she'd been deployed, and she answered clean and easy, dates and coordinates lining up with what we already had. Then I asked her, the way I always asked, low and unhurried, "Why did you do it?" "I gave it gladly," she said again. "No one made me." Same 11 words. Same 4-beat pause before no one. I'd started noticing the pause 3 confessions back, and hadn't said anything about it to anyone, because saying it out loud made it sound insane, a captured soldier's grief and guilt, syncing up to the exact millisecond across 100 miles of front and 3 different prison blocks. That night, I ran the recordings against each other. I'd done it twice before, and told myself I was wrong both times. I wasn't wrong. Overlaid, the 11 confessions matched waveform for waveform. Not similar, not close. Identical. The same breath intake, the same hitch before gladly, the same gap, 412 milliseconds long, every single time, like a verse recited from a hymnal none of us could see. I brought it to the garrison surgeon, a tired, decent man named Holt, who'd been patching up captives and our own for 3 years, and had stopped being surprised by much of anything. We'd worked together long enough that he didn't ask why before he agreed, just pulled his stool over and started prepping the scanner like it was any other Tuesday. I told him what I'd found and asked him to scan her, the whole skull, slow and careful, looking for nothing in particular, because I didn't know what I was looking for. He ran it twice, the second pass slower than the first, the 2 of us watching the structure of her skull resolve in gray-blue layers on the screen between us, bone and cartilage, and the dense knotted tissue Dorith used for hearing. He found it behind her jaw hinge, a wafer no wider than a thumbnail, milk pale, flush against the bone like it had grown there instead of being put there. Dorith physiology runs differently enough from ours that it took him an hour of comparison scans against 3 other captives, all clean, before he was willing to say out loud what we were both already thinking. It wasn't natural. It sat against a nerve, cluster their command structure called, in the handful of intercepts we'd managed to translate, the choir, the network that told every soldier in the field what to feel and when to feel it, and apparently, in the end, what to say. I want to be honest about what I did next, because it wasn't bravery, and it wasn't policy. Policy was to log the confession, close the file, move her to the work camps with the others who'd volunteered. A confession is a confession. Nobody above me was going to ask whether it was hers. But I'd watched her say the same sentence 11 different days running, in 11 different cells, in that exact same metered grief, and grief doesn't keep time like a metronome. Whatever she was feeling, it wasn't being asked of her. It was being played through her, the way you'd play a recording through a speaker. I told Holt to take it out. He didn't want to. Said it wasn't our place to decide what a prisoner's confession should sound like, that we'd both be accused of tampering with testimony if it ever surfaced. that I was about to make 1,000 pages of legal trouble out of a thumbnail-sized piece of alien hardware. He was right about all of it. I told him to take it out anyway. And because he was a decent man, and I outranked him by exactly enough, he did. It came free easier than either of us expected. No roots, no fused tissue, just sitting there, like it had been waiting to be asked to leave. Kethra went rigid the second it cleared the bone, the way you'd go rigid coming up too fast from deep water. Then she made a sound I hadn't heard from her before. Not the smooth recitation, not anything I had a translation file for, just sound. Animal and real. It took her 4 minutes to speak again. I counted, because by then, I was counting everything in that room. When she finally did, the cadence was nothing like the 11 confessions. It was ragged, unmetered, full of false starts. She said a name twice and stopped both times before finishing it, then gave up on it and said something else instead, broken in 3 different places, that translated, as close as our equipment could manage, to something like, I didn't gladly. Make it stop telling them I did. I sat with that a long time before I wrote anything down. Here is the part I haven't told anyone outside this room. I never logged what she actually said. I logged the disc, the scan, the surgical note. I did not write down her real words, because the moment I put them on a page, some review board 3 sectors back was going to read, I didn't gladly, as evidence of nothing in particular, and Kethra was going to go to the same work camp as every other Doroth who'd volunteered. The system wasn't built to hear the difference between a confession and a recording of one. I'm not sure it wanted to. So I filed her case the same as the other 11. Voluntary. Closed. And I kept, in a drawer I don't open often, the only recording I have of her actual voice. 4 broken words. Unmetered. Hers. Because somewhere there's a difference between what a person says and what's said through them. And I decided a long time ago that somebody on our side of the line ought to know it when they hear it, even if the paperwork never will. The garrison didn't change its procedure because of 1 disk in 1 drawer. I asked, twice, through channels, for a standing order to scan every Doroth captive before intake interviews instead of after. Both requests came back denied, citing time and equipment and the simple fact that a voluntary confession needed no corroboration. I kept asking anyway, in the quiet, unglamorous way you keep doing a thing nobody's told you to stop doing. And twice more that year I found what I'd found in Kethra. Different cell, different prisoner, the same wafer behind the same hinge, the same choir keeping the same impossible time across a front too wide for any one voice to reach on its own. I didn't fix the war. I didn't even fix Kethra's file, not really. On paper, to this day, she volunteered. The choir kept singing through thousands of other mouths that week, on schedule, in that same 412 millisecond grief, in cells I never sat in and never will. I took 11 minutes out of a network that ran for years and gave one voice back its own bad grammar. Some nights that feels like nothing at all. Most nights, lying awake with the garrison lights finally down for once, I think it's the only thing in that whole posting that was ever actually mine to give. Not a victory, not a rescue, just 4 broken words in a drawer that nobody made her say.